All right, so today we're diving into something pretty mind-bending. It's an idea that's thousands of years old, but honestly, it feels like it was made for right now. This is Chit Shakti. It's this radical, powerful idea that your consciousness, it isn't just a bystander watching the world go by. Nope, it's actively creating it.
So let me ask you something, a question that's been bugging philosophers forever. Is your consciousness just a passive screen? Just playing a movie called reality? Or is it something more? Is it the projector, the power cord, even the director, all rolled into one? That's the huge riddle we're going to try and unpack today.
Okay, so for a long time, one of the biggest schools of thought in India, Advaita Vedanta, they had a pretty clear answer. They said consciousness, or chit, is basically just a silent witness. It just watches. And the world, this whole thing around us, they called it Maya, an illusion, something you'd want to escape from. But then, along came the Tantric traditions with this totally game-changing idea. They said, hold on, consciousness isn't just watching, it's a dynamic, active, creative force. And that's what they called Chit Shakti. So in their view, the world isn't some illusion you need to run from. It's a real, tangible expression of the divine, something you're meant to dive into and engage with. Big difference, right?
So here's how we're going to break this all down. We'll start with that ancient riddle, then we'll unpack this awesome solution of consciousness force. After that, we'll see how the ancient masters actually mapped out the universe with this idea. Then we'll bring it right down to the personal level, to you and me. And finally, we'll look at how this ancient idea is being used as a kind of practical technology today. Sound good? Let's go.
All right, first up, the riddle of reality. So that classical view we talked about, it had a pretty big problem. If the ultimate reality is supposed to be totally static, silent, and unchanging, well, where does all this come from? This vibrant, messy, constantly changing universe? For a lot of people, the only answer was, well, it must not be real. It's just an illusion, a big cosmic magic trick.
But what if it's not a trick? What if it's real? That brings us to our second part, the consciousness force solution. The answer, according to the Tantric thinkers, is packed into this one incredibly powerful word, Chit Shakti. It's this idea that you just can't separate awareness from the power to actually do something.
Okay, so let's pull that word apart. The first piece, chit, is pure consciousness. Think of it like this. It's a self-lighting awareness. A lamp needs your eyes to be seen, and your eyes need your brain to make sense of the light. But chit, it doesn't need anything outside of itself to know that it exists. It just is awareness. It's the very foundation of knowing anything at all. That's silent witness.
And then you've got the other half, Shakti. This comes from a Sanskrit root, shak, which literally means to be able. So Shakti is pure, raw power in action. It's the ability to do. It's that kinetic energy, the universal force that makes everything, well, happen. So if Chit is the knowing, Shakti is the doing. It's the engine of the entire cosmos.
And the Tantric tradition has this really potent way of explaining how these two are inseparable. They say, Shiva without Shakti is a Shava, a corpse. Shiva stands for that pure, still consciousness, but without Shakti, his dynamic energy, he's lifeless. So they're not two different things at all. They're two sides of the exact same coin. Consciousness without power is just dead, inert.
And that right there is the big synthesis. This is the core of Chit Shakti. It's the declaration that awareness is force. It's not just a passive mirror reflecting reality. No, it's a dynamo, it's an engine. The very fact that you are aware is in itself an act of power. It's an act of creation.
Okay, so if consciousness is this creative force, how does it actually work? How does it create a whole universe? Well, let's jump into our next section, Blueprints of the Cosmos. Because the ancient Tantric masters, they didn't just stop with the big idea. Oh no, they mapped out the entire mechanics of creation.
They saw it as this incredible 5-step flow of energy. So first, you have that initial spark, pure conscious energy, Chit Shakti. Then that consciousness experiences the sheer bliss of its own being. That's Ananda Shakti. And that joy is what motivates it to create something. That feeling of bliss then focuses into a specific desire or intention. That's Icha Shakti, the will to make something happen. Next up, you need a plan, right? That's Jnana Shakti, the knowledge, the blueprint for what's about to be created. And finally, Kriya Shakti is the power of action that actually makes it all happen. It brings the whole thing into form. So you go from a silent spark to a whole universe. Pretty amazing.
Which leads to this really beautiful idea from a school called Kashmir Shaivism. They called it the doctrine of reflection. They said, look, the universe is a reflection, but hold on, it's not in some ordinary mirror. It's a reflection appearing in the mirror of consciousness itself. And this is a very special kind of mirror because it contains the object of reflection inside itself. It creates the reflection from its own being. So think about that. If the mirror, consciousness, is real, then the reflection, the world, has to be real too. The world is not an illusion. It's a real expression of that consciousness.
Okay, this is all fantastic on a cosmic level, right? We're talking galaxies and the birth of reality. But here's the thing. This blueprint isn't just for stars. It's the blueprint for you and me too. So let's bring this home. If we're all walking around with this divine creative powerhouse inside us, why do we so often feel, well, small, powerless, limited? What's the deal with that?
Well, Kashmir Shaivism has this really elegant answer for that. They call them the malas, which can be translated as impurities. But get this, they're not sins in the way we usually think of them. They're more like self-imposed limitations, veils that consciousness puts on itself, almost like it's playing a cosmic game of hide and seek. First, there's Anava Mala. That's the feeling of smallness, when the infinite I am shrinks down to a little separate me. Then there's Maya Mala. That's the veil of duality, where we see everything as separate, me versus you, this versus that, instead of seeing the underlying unity. And finally, Karma Mala. That's the feeling of being a limited agent, like we're just a cog in a machine, bound by our actions. So freedom in this view isn't about gaining something new. It's about remembering. It's about recognizing the unlimited power that was there all along, hiding under these veils.
Fast forward to the 20th century, and the philosopher Sri Aurobindo comes along and gives this whole idea a modern spin. He described it as this grand cosmic two-step. First, you have involution. This is where the divine, this pure consciousness, deliberately dives down into its total opposite. It hides itself so completely that it becomes what we call matter, a holocaust of self-sacrifice, as he put it. But then, the second move begins, evolution. That very same consciousness starts to wake up from its deep sleep. Matter evolves into life, life evolves into mind, and, he argued, mind is destined to evolve into an even higher, superconsciousness, the inevitable work of Chit Shakti.
So in Aurobindo's view, you see, matter isn't dead. It's not unconscious stuff at all. It's sleeping spirit. He even called it a somnambulist consciousness, like a sleepwalking awareness. So even a rock is packed with this hidden, sleeping consciousness. The whole universe, then, is this incredible divine game of hide and seek. And Chit Shakti is the one playing, hiding from itself only to have the joy of finding itself again. Okay, so let's shift gears for our final section and see how this deep, ancient philosophy has been translated into something incredibly practical for the modern world. This is where we go from philosophy to technology. Not technology for your phone, but a technology for your own self.
Modern spiritual teachers like Sadhguru have taken this whole complex history and boiled it down to something super simple and direct. For him, Chit Shakti is, quite simply, the power to create. He's kind of stripped away the ancient jargon and presented it as a fundamental human ability, a power that you have, that I have, that we can all learn to use to consciously shape our lives.
So what does that actually look like in practice? Well, here's an example, a 6-stage meditation designed specifically to manifest success. And if you look closely, you'll see it's built directly on those ancient principles we just talked about. So you start with relaxation and activation. That's all about gathering your energy, pulling it inward, getting the raw materials ready. Then you create a mental void, a blank slate, a space of pure potential. And from that silent, receptive space, you project your will, your focused intention. Remember Icha Shakti? That's it right there in action. You then imprint your specific goals onto that consciousness, and then, and this is key, you integrate. You feel the emotion of already having achieved it. You embody the result before it even happens. It's a step-by-step process for lining up that inner creative power with the real-world goal.
Okay, so let's zoom out and put it all together. When you see it laid out like this, you can really track the incredible evolution of this single idea. We started way back with Advaita Vedanta, where the world is seen as an illusion and the goal is to basically negate it.
Then Kashmir Shaivas, we came along and said, no, the world is a real reflection, and the goal shifted to recognizing your own divine creative self. Sri Aurobindo saw the world as sleeping spirit, and the goal became nothing less than the total transformation of life and matter. And that brings us to today, with teachers like Sadhguru, where the world is a dimension to be mastered, and Chit Shakti is presented as the practical power to create the life you want. A pretty amazing journey for one idea.
I mean, what an incredible journey for an idea, right? From this super esoteric doctrine being debated by mystics in 10th century Kashmir, all the way to a guided meditation you can download on your phone. But through it all, it's the same fundamental idea, just adapted for a new time. That the awareness looking out through your eyes right now is the very same force that creates the stars. That consciousness and creation are not two separate things, they're one.
And so that leaves us with one last question. And this one is just for you. If any of this is true, if your awareness isn't just a passive observer, but is an active creative force, then what are you choosing in this very moment to create? Thanks for joining us for this explainer.